Hey traders, welcome on back to our Pro Trader webinar here with Bookmap. My name is Josh Levitan. I'm a senior instructor over at Cyber Trading University, CTU. Great to always be on this platform and so grateful here. So thank you first and foremost to Bruce, Dan, and the team here. Great to have all of us though, just joining us on YouTube as well as on Discord as well. I see a bunch of us on the Bookmap Discord right now. Quick shout out to Simon, Saru, JB, you got Jorge on there, you got Stormtrooper. Actually, you were there last time, I believe. Great to see Calaman here and a few more just joining us and everyone else just collectively. So let's hop right into a few things here just to begin. Just some housekeeping notes. This is a quick bio for any of our first-time attendees listening to myself. Once again, my name is Josh Levitan. I've been with Fausto Pugliese, 35-plus-year pro, and trader himself, and Cyber Trading University for over 11 years now. So mainly what we focus on is both small cap stocks to day trade, but we also swing trade some larger cap stocks like AMD, Tesla, NVIDIA, which of course is fresh right off earnings just from yesterday. Now the whole market's been dropping off, so you caught me on a great day because there is a lot to at least discuss, not just US equities, but also crypto and Bitcoin. So, I know that a few of us here appreciate just Bitcoin price action, and we're going to get into that in a bit. Right now, it's actually approaching a pretty big support level, and we'll show that just via Bookmap itself. But you could find us directly over on YouTube as well as Twitter, now known as X, but also our website, cybertradinguniversity.com. So on social media at cybertradingu, just make sure to hit the follow or subscribe button there. Follow us on YouTube and X specifically, as well as our website right there. Now, just a couple of just general disclosure and risk guidelines. As always, trading futures, equities, and digital currencies involves substantial risk of loss and is not suitable for all investors, so on and so forth. A lot of text. I'm good with numbers, I'm not good with reading. No, seriously though, obviously we all know the risks involved with trading, but with that said though, just make sure that you get verified for Bookmap's Discord access. Just scan that QR code. You don't even need to be fancy with your phone. Just scan it with your phone, your camera, it'll pop up. Very easy for you to click on right there. If you're old fashioned, go right to discord.gg/bookmap to get involved. And with that, I think that we have Bruce's pilot program here as well. Make sure to check that out directly on Bookmap's website. Bruce was over at our Trader Summit event in Long Island, New York just last month. So Bruce is a Northeast guy himself. I'm actually from New York, although I'm living in Florida now. So it was great to see Bruce once again. He did a huge in-person presentation for us. Make sure to check out his pilot program though otherwise. And with that said, oh man, this market is tanking right now. So I want to get right into the market altogether. I'm in a few trades here at least, and we'll get into them, at least showing you what I looked for with our students inside our live trading account. So, normally Monday to Friday from 7 a.m. all the way until the market closes, we're all inside our live trading room here. We have about like 190 of us joining us directly inside our room here. Let me show you, in fact, because hey, we've been calling out the whole market throughout the day today. Stocks like SMCI, stocks like CYPH here ended up making a pretty good move. You could see a few of us here, Brian talking about the SPY here himself. There I am talking about the EPSM trade. That's a small cap. It's actually up about 95% right now as we speak. But point being, whole market's sinking right now. So what do we do next? Where do we go? Well, a couple of things. A, for anyone here that's familiar with shorting, you're going to be able to follow a bunch of equities on the way down. You could even buy some puts if you're just familiar with just simple options trading as well. But one thing to focus on here is a lot of these stocks that we trade, albeit I'm actually short on the common here on SMCI, you get a lot of these inverse tickers that are going actually opposite to what the markets are doing right now. So I think a lot of us here may be familiar with the VIX index and UVXY. That's an ETF that basically correlates to the VIX index entirely. Well, recently, a lot of stocks, they have these different inverse tickers out there that go opposite to what the equity does. So if you're not able to short, if you're in a cash account, then this is a really good opportunity for you. Something like SMCZ, which goes up opposite to what SMCI common here is doing right now. So I'll tell you what, I'm going to show you how I got into this trade as a short. I'm short on it right now, as you can see on the top right of my platform here at 34.91. I'm up about 8+% on my trade. But hey, I got lucky with the market drop off at least. We'll go into the SPY once again, and at least the charting behind it, that's not as much Bookmap reliant, but this trade was. This trade was completely based around Bookmap. So I want to show this because, hey, if you're a student inside our room, and if you're joining us right now there, then you know what we were calling out. So earlier today, market opened up, and listen, this stock is just something that we just kind of had on our radar. It's something that we have on the side list, as we say. It's our B list, our side list, and it's just that you don't really expect to see something like this make as strong of a move. But what happens if it breaks through a big level? That's what we ask first. If it could break through a big level, we should be expecting more momentum in said direction. So at least here at the time, there was about a 252,000 share order on the bid right at 35 bucks. You figure that could be support, but at least at first it came into it. It pulled into it here. Big order got filled, 251,000 of those shares right away in one transaction. Now with that though, the more times a stock can keep nipping and testing a support level, it's more prone for it to break through it. So just took the next stab below it and I jumped in. So pretty much right at 9:45 in the morning, I shorted this right here at this point. Now that leads me to say at 9:45 in the morning, if it's a direct inverse, opposite, then at 9:45 in the morning, then you should be inclined to jump in on this SMCZ. If SMCI Common's breaking that giant support level, then SMCZ is likely to make a pretty strong run. Now, the good thing about this type of trade, especially if you're in a cash account and you can't short, this is double leveraged. This is actually 2 times more powerful than the common. So yeah, I'm up like a good chunk on my short position here, but I'd be up double if I actually longed the inverse. So this is down almost 10%, or this is down, almost 5%. SMCZ is actually up 9 to 10%. I'm sure there's some divergence in the 2x, but otherwise though, pretty good move, right? And it's all built off of seeing SMCI here break below big support. Now we're going to combine Bookmap with just regular good old charting in just a moment here. So where do we have our next big support? We have our next big support, a little bit at 34, not much though, at 33.50. 33.50, we have a 411,000 share bid. So, hey, there's a good shot for this to drop down there, maybe lower if we're in a really weak market. But hey, even to buy puts, or if you were to short the common like I did here and get out right above this support, that's a pretty clean trade. That's what matters, right? If you leave money on the table, you know what that actually means? It means that you at least took some money off the table to even start. You could only say that you left money on the table if you actually took money off the table, right? So, at least here, if you jump in short and it drops down and you get out here, that's a hell of a trade regardless, right? Now, from there, what happened? Well, steady downtrend. So there's a chance as long as this trend holds and maybe as long as this stays below this could flip into a resistance. Then obviously there's chance for more. So I stuck into this trade myself, broke below it. So now at this stage, I'm just looking to see this flip into resistance and I'll be happy regardless now. Let me ask our Discord members here. Dagish here, I see Cookie Monster, I see Trucker Trader, a few funny names here just joining us. I see Dude, I see the Dude here, how about that? Where do we have our next major support level here on this trade? Where do we see our next big support looking at these horizontal orange or red lines here? I mean, there's one it's kind of testing right now, I guess, but the next one further down, right? That's right at 30. So 145,000 shares on the bid at 30 bucks. I'm assuming that the more we keep seeing the market drop, SMCI is inclined to drop a little bit lower. Now here though on the daily chart, this is where things get real interesting because this did fill a gap. This went down, I think it got pretty close, did it? Yeah, it filled the gap already. So this did fill a gap. It dropped all the way down towards the closing price from like May 9th, daily chart candle there. Obviously it can keep going lower, but that completes a technical gap fill. If it wants to keep dropping, there's a couple of wicks that bottom out at $31 and the open on this candle aligns with that. You also have a couple of these highs that align pretty well with 31. So even in a pretty decent scenario, if this just keeps dropping today, I would like to even see this get down towards the 31. I'd be content with that even. So, this is just something that we've been pretty consistent about inside our live trading room. For any of our students in our room, actually, I think one of our traders, Roberto, made some good money on this trade earlier today. One of our students I actually coach privately one-on-one even, but, just between this, a few more trades going down. We had the target trade, which I'm still short on, as of right now. I may look to get out somewhat soon, but, this was a pretty good drop from yesterday's earnings move. So not only did the market fall off today, but the market pulled back perfectly yesterday. It was a really nice top and then bottom move. So on target, they ended up missing, I think, the revenue. Earnings may have met or whatever, but I think they missed their revenue. They're saying that they're going to head into a slower holiday season. Okay, so I'm not as inclined to buy this stock. I just need to let you know that. If it's bad news and the stock is trending down, 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 I'm going to focus on down, down, down. I'm going to focus on shorting. Now, here's what happened though, because we did have a massive bid, and especially for pre-market, that's pretty rare. You don't see that really for pre-market, let alone for something more expensive, maybe for a NVIDIA, Tesla, AMD, Palantir. But for Target, I mean, this is very rare, even off of earnings. So 256,000 share bid, 85.30 was the price. Now it actually broke through the bid. So there was enough selling pressure to squeeze through this support, but it reversed back up. And then by the time the market opened, hey, it slung up higher. So could there have been a buying opportunity there? Yeah, but there's stocks moving right now that you and I aren't looking at, and they're going up and down, and we're missing out on those trades. We don't need to trade everything. We don't need to say, oh, I should have jumped in here. No, the stock was trending down off bad earnings. So that's just where if anyone bought it and they ran it up a little bit, kudos to them. Cool, nice, I'm happy for them. But otherwise though, this ended up making lower highs. It came back down. It broke below this as a huge support level. And that's what triggered a pretty decent short trade going into the afternoon. So Target was a great short yesterday. It just took a little while to get the gears going. It's like, was it Happy Days? You got to elbow the jukebox like the Fonz to get the music playing. No, that's pretty much what happened here, right? And that could have been in part with the market topping off early, pulling back after. But hey, this provided as a good short going into the afternoon. Now this was support right here. 660. Next one, at least otherwise, but here at 86.60, right? 90,000 share bid. So that also is a big level, and it broke below it here and tanked. So when a stock breaks below a big support level, I'm expecting big support to turn into big resistance, right? 86.60. So it took a few stabs over, but it was weak. It was really lack of momentum to the upside. And that's where I'm short from right now. So that's my other trade that I'm in on here, the Target. So I'm short on SMCI currently. I'm short on Target currently. Now with the market pulling back as much as it did, obviously we might get a little short covering into the end of the day. There might be some sort of relief perhaps as like an intraday. But outside of that though, Target, if we look on the daily chart for this trade, it already broke below big support. And that 85.30, right? 85.30 was that pre-market iceberg. Well, it broke below it today, later on after I got in. So now at this stage, where do we have our next support on Target? Well, if you're a student inside our live trading room, actually, I see a few of us here just joining us right now. Actually, I see Brad and I see Tim here in particular. So appreciate a couple of our students joining us across the YouTube here. But otherwise, though, we have big support. Big support right here around like 80 bucks, 79, 50-ish or whatever. Sounds like a ways away from 84.22. So I think that we're in pretty good shape for Target here, which came off bad earnings, or at least, missed revenue. They're expecting a slow holiday season, I guess. Kind of interesting because, Target bad earnings, Walmart good earnings, and with the whole market dropping off right now, kind of interesting to see Walmart not only, popping at the market open today, but they're actually at the highs. That's very impressive on a day like today. So actually, I kind of just rolled into this a bit here. I actually wasn't prepared to go over Walmart, but Target's a good short. Maybe I will get out on that soon if the markets bounce, because at least not everything is reporting a slow holiday season. Walmart's got to be killing it here coming up. So what do we have on Bookmap here? Mainly what we focus on are the orange and red lines on the heat map, which of course are painted by the COB column. Otherwise though, I use two different volume profiles. I use regular CVP, chart volume profile, and then I delta it. So I use the delta at least afterwards. But when the market opened for the Walmart trade, you know what? And morning earnings are always tougher, I always feel, compared to after the market close earnings. But we do have resistance at 105. That's a little bit larger resistance up top. Probably see more evidence come in when the market opens up here. So yeah, there we go. Market opens. We have a lot of consolidation within just a short, oh, you know what? Pardon me. This is 7 o'clock in the morning Eastern. There we go. Let's get my timeline straight for you guys here. All right, so here we are. This is towards the market open now. So we do happen to have a pretty big level going into the open, going into the market open. It's this 103.50 right off that chart volume profile here, right? So that's like the whole pre-market leading into the opening bell. Well, hey, all it took was one sling down and back up. Once it broke above this next resistance, it was off and running she went. So a pretty good move. Even in a pullback, I would expect 105 to initially be support. But if this wants to hold here and keep pushing up, we had a resistance at $110. That's been out there since the market even opened. This is at least first at 108. So, this could be a nice target initially, the 108 level, then next 110. But let me check the daily chart now for this. See, what I'll look for in chart tops isn't necessarily the tippy top, the all-time high here, which is really close actually to that 110, but it's a matter of consistency. So I'm using 1, 2, 3, 4, even 5 here, you could loosely say, these highs on those candles to make an approximated rounded top shape. Aside from this one move up down, this built a nice rounded top here. So that does coincide nicely with the 108. It does coincide pretty nicely, pretty tight with that 108. So we'll keep that in mind going into the afternoon. That's all. All right, now those are pretty much the main trades that we've been focused on calling out directly inside our live trading room. Now, for any of our members on YouTube or on Discord, if you have any questions, we'll get to them nearing the end of this broadcast. We'll be on for the next 30 or so minutes roughly, but if you have any questions, let me know, and we'll tend to them at the end. Now, I got to tell you, going into this, Bitcoin's been dropping off, and that's something that we're definitely going to get to in a moment, but there was something that I think I even had spoken about the last time I was afforded the chance to be on this platform here on Discord and on YouTube for Bookmap, and that was to go over an IPO that came out. It was called FIG, F-I-G. And hey, I'm in it right now, so I'm red on that at least a little bit, down like 0.75%, whatever. But this is an IPO that came out back in mid-August. It collapsed. Now, most IPOs do, so that's not a surprise. That's just expected. But FIG had a lot of hype behind it. Figma is like comparative to Adobe. If you're familiar with Adobe and all the programs behind it, Figma is essentially a competitor. They're like basically in the same league as Adobe, I'm told. Now, when they IPO'd, of course, we're going to keep track of it. I'm expecting this to tank as an IPO. Most do. Again, even look at Webull. If you focus on Webull from the beginning of this calendar year, look at where it is now, right? Most IPOs typically just tank. And obviously, you're going to get to Bitcoin in a bit, but look at Circle. This did have a little pop initially, but in the pits now. So we're not a big believer of IPOs as much as CTU, at least not at first. Here's Klarna. Here's StubHub. All these are recent IPOs that have just been losers this whole year. Well, Figma had a lot of hype, right? So we look at Bookmap, and this was back on August 7th. I remember this like the back of my hands. Not only do I remember this like the back of my hand, guys, but I actually posted about it on my own Twitter. So it was dated on August 7th. So, got the receipts, my friends. Wouldn't it be crazy if Figma kept dropping all the way down to the two iceberg orders, 100 plus 30,000 shares a pop, that are near $35? Now, for that, let me show you this picture. So this was back on August, whatever date, 7th, the 2nd, I think the 7th there. But just to say, Figma was trading at $80 a share, over 50% higher from where it's at now, right? So it's just to say, when it IPO'd, we ended up seeing these orders on the bid One was at $35 and then the other was at $33. The combination of them put together create this more blotchy, thicker orange line on the heat map at the time. But it wasn't just out there for one day. It wasn't just out there for 2 days, 3 days. Remember the date here, August 7th? So I ended up following up on this, and I think like a month later, I think it was like September 11th, we kept seeing those orders pop up there. Look at this, September 11th here. There's the chart. There's the heat map. There's September, right? There's the date, September. So those orders were out there for not just days, but they're out there for weeks, maybe even a month longer. I kind of stopped keeping track of it after a certain point. Now, right now, those orders are no longer there. So I don't know when they had disappeared, but that was back 2 months ago, my friends. That was, 3 months ago almost. So it's there now. It got pretty close to 33. And now there is an order on the sell side at 35. So technically, there's still a lot of selling pressure weighing this down here. We traditionally say don't catch a falling knife, because unless if you're experienced and know how to manage a move, which, hey, let's be truthful here, not everyone manages trades as well as they really should be. So unless if you manage trades incredibly well, then catching falling knives is pretty risky. It's very dangerous. You're going to get hurt. So I am going to get out on this trade if it ends up moving a bit lower over time, and I'll consider it again if it ends up holding support better over 34, 35 area. 33 is kind of the line in the sand there. But for the time being, hey, you know what? I don't mind giving it a stab. You're never going to make money if you're too afraid to risk it to even start. So it's a very risky play. Obviously, I'm down a small amount right now. It's like 10-year size anyway. I'm in from 34.20. I at least waited for it to drop a little lower into that web. But, it doesn't need to drop all the way to 33. It could just kind of bounce from in between and go back up. And then again, who knows if it's even going to bounce? This thing is a dart on the way down, so it's super risky. This is not something that we normally advocate to do. But hey, you normally don't tend to see this type of order flow like this. You don't tend to see this pattern on the order book that frequently for a stock like Figma, off an IPO like that. All right, so that's kind of what we're working with directly inside our live trading room. Now with that, oh man, so SPY has been getting beat up bad, and we'd called out the top the last 2 days. That's just more based off of good old charting there, not as much on Bookmap, but pointing out at least 667.3 yesterday. This high from this weekly bar that served as yesterday's high, and then actually, if you flip over to the daily chart, this here was my top that I was using going into today. Of course, NVIDIA came out with great earnings and they had a big pop and whole market pushed up with it, right? But there was a lot of selling pressure the last, couple weeks. So I wasn't a true believer in the whole market just reversing, right? It's going to take some time for that to happen. So what that means is we're going to tend to see resistance hold where it should. So it just took a little while here, right? Popped up at first, moved up a little higher, came into these two lines from the daily chart, came back up. Well, if you're a student of CTU, Cyber Trading University, and for all of us on Discord and all of us on YouTube, we invite you to join us inside our live trading room at the end of this presentation. Stay tuned if you'd like, and join us directly for the next week or so live inside our room. If you got Thanksgiving next week, just give us a call. We'll make sure to give you the full 7 days there. No sweat there. But just to tell you, if you're inside our live trading room, you know that we were anticipating a pullback because we teach in our classes around 10:30 in the morning, give or take, obviously. It's not always on the nose. But at 10:30, loosely, that's where you should expect to see reversals. So right around 10:45, that's where everything fell south. So that's just where it became an easier trade for us to focus on those shorts. But oh man, is Bitcoin getting beat up. So, hey, I took a couple losses on Bitcoin the last 1 or 2 days because I'm looking for a bounce. You're never going to make money if you're too afraid to risk it to begin with. So, that involves accepting the consequence of, hey, what happens if 92,000 doesn't hold as support? right? Now for this, again, I'm going to go into Bookmap in just a moment, but I'll show something that I tend to focus on a little bit for just regular charting and technical analysis. We normally don't do that with day trading at CTU here, but otherwise, let me just show this here if I can. No, I got to get the extension lines. Wrong one. Here we go. There we are. Got a lot of lines here, so give me a second. I'll clear up. There we are. So what I did here is actually I used Fibonacci extension lines. I went crazy on this. I did something here I just played with, and I said, ooh, I think I really like what I got. So follow along here if you can. This right here is essentially a fib extension from 2015 into 2020. So it's half of a decade, and it actually goes directly off of low, the high on this candle it's off of, and then the low right here back from December of 18. So it creates this set of extension lines that you could anticipate resistance levels off of and whatnot. All right, the key of all of this is to see resistance become support. Resistance becomes support. That's all we're looking for here now. So I was initially focused for a potential bounce on Bitcoin if it were to at least stay over 92, 91, 92,000. It was from this series of lows and wicks that we had back in December, Jan, Feb of this year. So this is where I tried to take a couple trades, but if it's not going to make that hold of support, and if it's not going to make that big bounce going up, then we're going to keep seeing a pullback. We're going to see just further continuation. So we saw Bitcoin drop down, and it actually fell down towards this fib extension line that, granted, it broke over, shook around a bit, it moved off of it though. So resistance should become support. Now with that though, and there's another series of lines I'm playing around with. So maybe we drop down as low as 81,000 though, and then back up. So it's not going to be so guaranteed to see, it's not going to be so guaranteed to see which one's going to hold perfect, but this is where, at least over time, give it a series of days, even give it a series of weeks, and we're going to start to see support solidified. You don't want to just try and catch falling knives, but if it's off a level that you believe it could bounce off of, maybe you can get a quick scalp day trade move, or maybe it could turn into a swing. But I'm sure happy I didn't try and turn this into a swing from 91, 92,000, because if I did, I'd be down big, right? So that's where we'll get into Bookmap right now, because that fib line, maybe a little bounce right there perhaps. Outside of that though, we got support at 85. We got 400 Bitcoin nearly put together. That's across the Binance, Wobai, and OKEx exchanges, right? So, of course, with that, there's other exchanges, there's derivatives, there's all sorts of order books and whatnot, but Binance is probably your largest, right? I would assume that Binance is your largest spot exchange, one of them at least. So I would trust this, saying that, listen, we got big support at 85,000. And if you want to break out the calculator at least and kind of do the math on it, $85,000 per Bitcoin times 400, that is $34 million worth of coin. So, I'd say that's pretty respectable. Now, it might just slice below there and keep dropping. So that's where I tell you, it is very risky to catch a falling knife. You don't want to just jump in on the bid, assuming it's just going to hold perfectly. Give it time. The more it fails to break any lower, that's where you want to at least take the risk. So this might look to break below 85,000 quick, but if it wicks back above it and stays back above it there in the subsequent hours, etc., then you have a real shot. Then you have a real opportunity there. But it's very tough to just do it right away. When a stock or when an asset or otherwise an entire market is dropping, a lot of traders tend to lose money, not necessarily by holding on to long-term positions. That obviously is one way that traders get crushed, but it's by trying to catch the falling knife. All right. So, real briefly, if you have any questions right now, especially in Discord, let me know. Dan, I may need your assistance, my friend, on that, especially for the YouTubes. But, if any of our members or attendees here just inside YouTube or Discord have any questions, let me know right now. And then any other stocks you'd want me to take a look at, let me know as well. But we're going to jump back inside our live trading room in probably about 5 or 10 minutes, I'd say. Yeah, there we go. We got the chat right now open. So we got Steven here just chatting to us here. Not sure if you looked at Ethereum. Not today, but we could definitely check that out. Why not? Let me actually delete a couple of these off here because I tell you, just for as good as Bookmap is, my computer is not always. So I don't want to have too many different tickers on here first because that might overheat. So or kind of freeze things up at least otherwise. So let's go over to Ethereum right now. A great suggestion right there from Steven. If I could type, that is. Let's see. Let's go Ethereum USDT because that's the same as the Bitcoin one, right? Now we'll load up the last 6 or so hours. If I could load up more, I will, but let's just start with that. Let's see. Now for this, I don't use this as frequent on Ethereum, so I'll need to adjust my settings a little bit. I try and get it as micro as I can on the tick size and granularity, but yeah, here we go. So what I'm doing right here, I kind of move the cutoff percentages way up. That's just my personal preference. I kind of nickname that dimming the lights. I like to dim the lights a little bit. It makes it a little bit easier to kind of see the larger orders out there. Turn that into a CVP, go bars only there. I like get delta up, why not? Now you can copy different settings from stocks and actually paste it here. You can inherit chart settings and so forth. But at least here for Ethereum, wow, yeah, so we did just bounce off a pretty good sized order here. At 2,800, you have about 11,144 Ethereum, coin there at that 2,800. So again, breaking out just the calculator, 2,800 per coin times 11,144. That's pretty similar size in terms of the amount of dollars, right? That's actually about $31.2 million worth of volume. So that's actually very similar. I think the Bitcoin one was about 34. This is about 31.2. Now, if it were to break that, if Bleep really hits the fan later on today, which, by the way, we're going to get to this in a bit, but a lot of liquidations take place during the after hours, in the evening hours, but a very good chance we may see a further drop off. But Ethereum here, yeah, if it breaks below 2,800, unless if something steps in, our next volume-based level here on the bid right now is 2,500. But again, remember, these are limit orders. So there's going to be chart volume, there's going to be chart levels that play in part with where we might find support next. But in terms of just using this to our advantage, should it break below 28 and stay below 28, probably more inclined to go down towards 25. And it doesn't need to touch it for that to happen. It might drop down to 26. I'd say that's a pretty big move either way once it breaks below 28. So you could use this as a guide for understanding where you might find the next level on a stock like this. Steven says, I was just going to say that you can inherit the settings as well. Yeah, that's one of my favorite features, honestly, because what you just saw me do, it's like kind of I don't want to say it takes an effort, but that's me not being lazy. If I want to make it quick, I could just right click, go to chart settings, inherit, and then bam, right there. Dude, great to see the dude on Discord right now. He says, Josh in the CTU trading room will definitely take your trading to the next level. How about that? Appreciate you, dude. And you know what? I'm not just making that up. How about this? I'll show that, dude, because I appreciate you. That goes for any of our attendees just joining us here. We're going to extend an offer to you just coming up at the end of this presentation in the next 5 or 10 minutes. I probably said that twice now at this point, but either way, we're going to keep going, right? But, I appreciate you, dude. Thank you very much. Now, with that, though, let's get into at least the Bitcoin drop-off further, because I'd mentioned that a lot of big moves happen when the market closes, when U.S. equities market closes at 4 p.m. Eastern or after, obviously. That's where you tend to see some pretty big cascades in liquidation. I remember last year, there was a day in August, another day back in the beginning of the calendar year in 2024 even. You were seeing 8,000, 9,000 point drops on Bitcoin within 15 minutes. Crazy. And, there's a whole thing behind that, way above my pay grade, way over my pay level. Unfortunately, I can't really, put that into a paragraph to verbalize to you. But there's a bunch of things that led to these big liquidations. Well, with how much Bitcoin's already been dropping just during the regular day today, this is bad enough, right? Well, my friends, if you're new to the crypto market, keep your eye on the ball later on this evening. Keep your eye on the ball at 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, 8 o'clock. I don't want to have you attached at your desk all night, but you're going to see some larger moves in the after hours. Now, also, just something to keep note of is, especially now with the Bitcoin ETF, unless if news comes out with BlackRock and they decide to halt it for news pending, assets don't get halted in the after hours for volatility. There's no circuit breaker halt in the after hours. There's no limit up, down, pause. So that's where IBIT can see a much larger move in the after hours, at least a lot more volatile of a move comparative to even what you're seeing here. Like down 3%, you think that's bad? We'll see what happens later on this evening. All right, folks. So, hey, I got the Discord up. If there's anyone on YouTube right now have any questions, definitely let me know here. But otherwise, we're going to wrap up here in a few. And certainly for Dude, who's checked this out, certainly I feel. But anyone else otherwise, if you have, any questions, let me know. But I would love to extend the offer for all of us here to join us directly inside our live trading room. Just give me a quick moment there for that. Bam. All right. So, actually going into the next week, we're even offering some better deals for Black Friday, but that's more for students here. If you're just looking to dip your toes into the pool, test your feet, and dip your toes into the water and test yourself and join us directly inside our live trading room, you could do so for a week-long trial for just $9. So you could actually scan this QR code here. Otherwise, go to this link. It's just a short link right there, ct.co/trial. And then, otherwise, we have audio broadcast all throughout the day. There I am. There's my ugly mug right there, Josh Levitan. But we're led by 36+ year pro Fausto Pugliese. He would actually be here right now presenting for you. So with that, he's actually he's on business right now. He's just out this whole week, and including today. He'll be back, I think, tomorrow, maybe inside our live trading room. But he is always there otherwise, and otherwise led by myself. I've been with Fausto for about 11 years now, alongside my colleague Rich. He's pretty handy on the IT side of things. Actually, so much so that he is tagging in for me right now as I am doing this very broadcast. So there's Rich doing a broadcast for us live right now. You got all students here like Brian chatting, as we had brought up before, Kathleen, Jerry, Roberto. He covered a short with me in a coaching session just earlier. So they're all there right now. But join us for a week inside our live trading room. You'll get access to our live trading chat room, the chat board here, all of our students right there. And you also have access to our alert service too. So even if you're not inside the live trading room, you can get access to notifications on your phone. But otherwise, we have workshops and podcasts. We had the infamous Bruce Pringle on just pretty recently. He attended our Trader Summit event. So check that out. But otherwise, join us by going right to this link here, ctu.co/trial, or scan that QR code right there and you can get access. And we're going to post the link there to you in just a bit. Let me do that right now. If you're on Discord right now, you should have seen this little link right there. I just posted ctu.co/trial. That'll get you live access for a week. All right. Now, again, let me know if you have any other questions, folks, but I think that we're going to wrap it up here in just a few minutes. So Dan and Steve and everyone else otherwise, I'll leave it off to you folks. And, for Dude and for all of us otherwise, Kazegi and all of our attendees on Discord as well as YouTube, I appreciate you folks joining us here. And we look forward to seeing you inside our live trading room in the near future.